Just trust your ears is honestly terrible advice. Yes, your ears matter, and it should always be the final verdict in whether something is good or not. But if that's your only filter for whether your track is good, you're going to go in circles. I can't tell you the amount of times the students bought me a track of theirs. They said, I trusted my ears, but I still think something's missing. I run them through the system that I'm going to show you today, and their entire perspective shifts. Turns out there actually is a way to completely remove the guesswork when it comes to emulating the quality of world-class tracks. So today, I'm excited to reveal to you this methodology broken down over a series of 5 videos. I've never seen anyone do this method. This is something that I created myself, and it's something that helped me become a much better producer in such a small amount of time. And anyone I teach it to, also, it becomes an exceptionally better producer in a few weeks. So let's get into it.
This is the template that I use for my production, my mixing, my mastering, everything all in one. You can actually download this plus all of the racks I'm going to show you today and throughout the next 4 videos as well for free just by clicking the link below. So yeah, if you want to follow along, you can just go download that. Or you can just recreate it in your own way. Let's say, for example, you don't use Ableton. Everything is still going to be applicable in like FL. I've taught students the same methodology using FL or Logic. It's the same sort of workflow. First thing we need to do is we need to make a reference channel, an audio channel. Now I'm going to drag in a track. The track I'm picking here, it's just one of mine. I would usually pick like obviously a banging track that's produced by like one of the best engineers in the world and so on, because that's what you want to emulate, right? But I don't want to get striked on here on YouTube, so I'm just going to use one of my own tracks. So yeah, drag the reference track in, loop it at like the peak of the song or the point where you're referencing against. So if you're making a drop section, you're going to reference it against the drop section of the reference, right? If you're doing the bridge or the build, then you'd reference that. So when you drag your reference track, a word of warning, if it's in a different BPM, you'll need to warp it. If it's the same BPM, you can either warp off, it's absolutely fine. So let's say it was in a different BPM to the project. What you need to do is turn warp on, put it in repitch mode, and then type in the BPM of the reference track here, which is 126 in this case. Another thing you might have to do is if you zoom in right the first beat, there's like a little bit of silence here. So you're just going to like put a warp point in there, take out that first warp point, and then just drag this back. So that becomes a new 1-1. And now everything should be synced up. Actually, I think it's a little bit out. Maybe it's not 126, maybe it's like 127. There we go. So that's why we check. Cool. So now this is now linked up. Even though the reference track is 127, the project's 124. And now we just want to go to where the drop is. I'm going to drag that back in here. I'm just going to delete everything else for now. I can still get it back later just by dragging it out. But you might be wondering why repitch mode? And I'm going to show you right now. So if we pick like Complex Pro and I play this now into the master, I'm getting an extra 4 decibels pushed into it. There's nothing on my master that would turn the volume up or make it louder. It's just the way the warp modes work. So the only one I found that actually stops this happening is repitch mode. This does mean that the track is going to be slightly detuned, but it doesn't matter in terms of referencing because we're referencing from a mixing perspective. So we put it in repitch mode and you'll notice now we're getting 0.018 increase, right? So it's barely nothing. That's really important to do to make sure it's in repitch and not complex or beats, because you're going to get either warping fluctuations or you're going to get volume increases, which we don't want. And the last thing on the reference track is you want to stick a Q3 or Q4 in here. If you don't have Fat Filter, don't worry. You can use Span, which is totally free. But for now, yeah, just stick a Span on here or Q3 or Q4. And then we're going to go to the master. And so here's my mastering chain. And just to start off with, this is not affecting the sound of anything at all in the slightest. These are all analytical tools, which I'm going to show you. The only thing that does change the sound here is going to be this clipper. And the clipper is actually turned off at the moment. And what happens if I press Control K, I actually have a hotkey here on the solo button of the reference track, X, which is going to solo the reference track. The same hotkey is actually going to turn off the clipper. So when I push Shift X, it turns it back on, but it goes back to my project. I hit Shift X again, it turns the clipper off, but it goes back to the reference. That way I'm not boosting the volume of the reference, I'm only boosting the volume of my track to match it to the reference. Now you notice I don't turn the reference track down to match my project. I boost my track up to match the reference. I'm going to show you how to do this in the next video, but for now I just want to show you how to get the setup. So that's important. Just set those hotkeys up. This reference rack I'm actually going to do at the end, but we're going to go through all the analytical tools here. So the first thing I have is True Level, which is a loudness meter. Anything that can give you an integrated LUFs readout is perfectly fine. U-Lean, for example, is free. That will do. The next is going to be Span. This is going to show just like the graph. Mine's set up in such a way where the gray is the stereo and the red is the sides only. and so I can sort of see what's going on there, but very simple. Next up, we have Vision 4X. I think you can get this for free as well. There's a trial version of it or a light version of it for free. It's a really cool tool. It has like a stereo thing, has like a graph like tonal balance control has. It has an oscilloscope, and then it has a heat map here. So the way I've got it set up, I just really want to see the heat map and a little bit of this. It looks kind of like this. Just shows you kind of like what's going on in the reference track in terms of like a nice color. The next thing we need on this master chain is a Q4 again. Again, there will be nothing here. This is the thing that's going to communicate with the EQ on the reference track. Now, if you don't have Q4, totally fine. You can use span, but basically click on here. You're going to go to externals, and then you're going to select your reference track. So then it reads in the information into it like so. So your project would be the gray, and then the reference track would be the red. But if you don't have Q4, use span, totally fine. You just have a second span. This is not doing anything really. It's more for sound design, but you can stick on if you want. This is free to download. And finally, we have an oscilloscope. I'm using Shaperbox, but you can use SmecScope or SizeScope. I know SmecScope is free, but Shaperbox has been like the one I found to be the easiest to use. It looks like this. In terms of setup then, one thing you'll need to do, this is Ableton specific, is come to settings. We're gonna go plugins, and we're gonna go to multiple plugin windows on, auto hide and auto open turned off. This is gonna allow you to open up plugins no matter where you are in the project, so they don't close automatically. Then in terms of hotkeys, I'm gonna go Shift Q for my loudness meter, Shift S for span, Shift W for Vision 4X, Shift E for the referencing EQ or another span, and then we're going to go to Shift T for the oscilloscope. And then again, this allows me to open up everything with just a hotkey. I don't have to click anything. I can be anywhere in the project. I can quickly analyze what's going on. So that's the setup in terms of hotkeys and what plugins you'll need. There are free alternatives for all of these. All right, so now we get to this reference rack. This is really the heart and soul of it. The first two things we have is two utility tools. One is just a utility with the mono button turned on, so the whole project basically goes to mono. And then another one, which is just another utility tool, but you right click, put it in mid-side mode, and you turn this all the way up. So that will just give you the side information. Just really should say side. Next up, we have a series of EQs. I'm using Q4 here, but if you don't have Q4 again, you can use any EQ. And I'm setting up very specific bands. So this one is like 20 to 90, and this is just getting the subs. This next one is going to be 90 to 200, which is going to give me the lows. This next one's going to be 200 to 600, give me the low mids, and so on. So you see I've set up like several EQs. That's going to give me all the different bands I need. I'll actually add a cheat sheet below. You can go look at how to build this yourself. I've got all the numbers plotted out. So something that's important to point out is with Q4, I put it in natural phase mode just so like the cuts don't add phase, or at least not as much phase. It still adds a little bit of phase. The other option is you could do linear phase, but it's going to add so much latency, it's just not worth it. But if you don't have Q4 or Q3 again, just use your normal EQ, just deal with the fact it adds phase. You're going to be using it against a reference track, so you're adding the phase to the reference track anyway, so it kind of balances out. But it is a nice addition to have. And then in terms of like hotkeys, the little button next to one, to the left of one, I don't know what you call that, the command thing. I have that for the mono, and I have shift and that for the stereo. And then for the 7 EQs I've got here, it's going to be shift 1, shift 2, shift 3, shift 4, shift 5, shift 6, and so on. So that's the whole thing, how it's set up. Now, what does this look like in action? So let's say we've got the reference track in, we've got it solo, the clipper's turned off, and we can play it. We can start looking at these tools, right? You can see that, we can see the shaper, we can see the oscilloscope through Shaperbox. If I make this a bit longer. Okay, nothing like game breaking so far, like I've seen a fucking scope tool before. But now what we can do is we can look at the side information, we can look at the subs, we can look at the specifically like side sub information if you want to. How much stereo is there in the sub, for example? So I can push like shift 1, turn on the subs, and now I can see the low end of the reference track, and I can kind of emulate this. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? I can look at that visually. I can also open up my loudness meter, reset the meter, and I can see what the LUFs are of the subs specifically. So we're getting like 10.2 here or something like that. So that kind of tells me, okay, well that's what my sub should be, right? If I was building my track around this reference. We can look at other things like span, see what's going on in terms of the fundamental and the stereo width. Vision 4X. See what's going on. Let's say I wanted to hear all of the side information for the hats. I can turn on stereo only, and then also turn on the high end. I can see how loud stuff is in the side field for the high ends, or I can look at the mono. So I can very quickly detect here that, like, okay, the hi-hats are actually really wide, but the snare isn't. The snare is quite mono, because if we go listen to the mono signal for the air again, I can hear the snare cutting through and the kick. But if I put it in stereo, inside, sorry, kick's gone and the snare's gone as well, but I can still hear the top end of the synth, and I can still hear the hi-hats, right? So I know those are supposed to be wide and the other stuff is supposed to be more mono. That was just a quick example then of how I'm using that. In the next lesson, I'm going to show you how to actually build the anchoring points for this to actually work, because if you do this with like a project that doesn't have the right anchor points and doesn't have the right hierarchy, this is all going to fall apart really quick. So what I want you to do is go build this rack yourself on your master chain, save it so you have it. If you don't have the paid plugins, get the free versions. You can just replicate all of this with free versions. Or if you want, my templates are free download in the link below. You can grab that and you just have it. I'll also include the cheat sheet. But yeah, video will be up here. See you there. Bye.